Welcome, welcome, welcome. Buy Black for Life. Welcome. Welcome, Buy Black for Life members, to another one of our Wellness Wednesday conversations. And we're continuing with the theme on mental health. Um, and so come on in. Welcome. Come on in. We are on StreamYard. We are on YouTube, and of course, we are on Facebook, Buy Black for Life. My name is Jerome Hurt, founder and CEO of Buy Black for Life. And I have to tell you, we had a few weeks ago an amazing discussion with four of our guest panelists who are here right now. And we added another one, four, including me. So we added another panelist as well as new members to the group. Okay, that's is that you, Deacon? Yes, we can hear you now. Welcome. I heard her. We hear you slightly, but yes, we do hear you. So since Deacon wasn't here before, I'll just quickly run through her bio, and hopefully the technical issues we have, we will be able to get those worked out. So Deacon Ingrid Kratz Duval has a degree in communications disorder, and there goes the family dog at the perfect time, like always. She became a widow after 27 years of being with her husband. She retired from the United States Postal Service after 33 years. She currently volunteers at Barringer High School. Yeah, can you mute because we're getting some.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Just mute the phone.
Okay. Mute.
Yes.
Okay. Is it me now that's making that noise? That's really bad. Oh, wow. Hold on one moment. Let me try a different. Is this better? Can everyone hear me clearly? This is awesome. Wow. Does it sound better now? Wow. Dr. Jackie, do you have everyone's calls? Okay, so computer.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that. Oh, is it me too? Is it our connection? Okay. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So as Jerome was sharing, I'll start again. It's an honor to be here with Deacon Ingrid. She has a degree in communications disorders. She became a widow after 27 years of being with her husband. She retired from the United States Postal Service after 33 years as a review clerk. She currently volunteers at Barringer High School in the food and clothing pantry services. She became interested in helping the less fortunate during the 1980s and began volunteering in schools, reading to the blind, and driving the elderly. During this time, she noticed more and more individuals experiencing homelessness on the streets. As a deacon at Emmanuel Love Family Worship Center, she felt God's urging to help. She remembers her mother saying how during the Great Depression there were public baths and how looking and smelling nice can make everyone feel better. She is currently the CEO and founder of Street Spa Fellowship. This program provides hygiene kits to individuals experiencing homelessness in order to maintain their integrity and dignity. This service is available by the generous donations provided to her, where she has a car full of things, and if she sees someone, she's more than likely to give them a support and a helping hand.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie. And please, panelists and whoever's watching, please excuse me with the technology. I'm back on a different platform now. Everything seems to sound good right now. So thank you for that. I also wanted to quickly welcome in Shauna Council, who is part of our founder executive group. And she's been in the group from day one, and she's now a part of our team. So thank you, Shauna, for being here. So I'm going to jump right into some questions. And Eli, I'm going to start with you first. What does trauma look like to you? I'm having the same problem, aren't I?
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm having problems hearing a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay. Okay, so you're starting off with me? I'm sorry.
No, I was starting out with Eli. Did you hear the question?
Okay.
I still sound bad.
Go ahead. Ask again, Jordan. I'm sorry.
Sure. What does trauma look like to you?
So
Shauna, mute. Can you mute? Okay.
that's a rather difficult question. I think that when I think of what trauma looks like to me, what comes into mind, right, are sort of telltale signs of trauma, right? Things like certain ways of behavior. I think of, for example, how in some of my students, trauma can look like defiance. It can look like withdrawal. It can look like just a sense of like sort of loss of control or inability to sort of take hold of the things in your life. Right. But I think that the thing about a question like that of what does trauma look like is that there is no real look
right
for trauma. Mm-hmm. Trauma can be the extrovert and trauma can be the introvert. Trauma can be the life of the party and trauma can be the loner. And so it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to pinpoint the specifics of what like trauma looks like to me. I know that as an educator, I know what trauma looks like in my own life. And I know that as an educator, we're taught to sort of look for what can be those telltale signs of traumatic experiences in children. But, sometimes
so it shows up differently is
what it really does. It shows up very differently. And I think that's the part that makes trauma so difficult to deal with is especially when it shows up in ways that, we we cannot recognize.
Yeah.
Because there's something about, the person with, the trauma that has exhibited itself in suicidal ideations.
Yes.
And then there's the thing about that person who the trauma is so deeply buried, so within that that you can't see it. It
Right.
doesn't look like anything, or it looks like normalcy, whatever that is.
Thank you. Dr. Jackie, same question, but one of the, I know with the work you do with momentum, right? You might see it also manifests itself in that room that we've all been in, or now until we go back to in person, virtually. So, and so I'm sure you've seen it with, as you staff, but what does it look like to you, and, in what the work you do, as well as with what you do with momentum?
So it's interesting you should ask that, because trauma, like Zulai said, comes in many facets. I've seen trauma relived, right, based on some experiences in the activities performed, right? And again, to remind people that they're not where they are, where they have experienced a traumatic experience, right? Oftentimes with trauma, if you put trauma under the rug, it's gonna come back one way or the other.
Right.
Right. And that's, the Pandora's box. It's always going to show up in an area in your life, whether if you're in a leadership position, whether you're aggressive and assertive, right? Or you may be a person that confronts people. Also, what I find is in my line of work, servicing individuals for 30 years who are HIV positive and their families, it was interesting because what came to mind was that trauma can look like missed appointments. I'm not going to the doctor.
Wow.
Every time I go to the doctor, you're giving me bad news.
Right.
Especially someone who is living with anything that's like HIV/AIDS or cancer. It's a numbers game. I come to the doctor and you're telling me what my T cell count is. You're telling me where I am. And so me personally, I'm now been diagnosed with thyroid, right? I am grateful that I'm able to see and have support systems, but I can easily be traumatized every time you throw a number at me,
Right.
or every time you tell me, well, look, it went up today and it went down, and the way in which you speak to me, that's traumatic, right? But for me, in the church atmosphere, the safe space that have been created allows people to then go into those traumatic areas, right? Even if it's just superficial, right? And then to then support them in what does it look like, and then how can I support you by linking you to a mental health professional, right? So trauma can also look like a well put together person. Right? It looks like makeup, beautifully put makeup on. It looks like that beautiful dress when you go to a dinner, a gala. It looks like everything that you would think, right, is not. And so it can look so beautiful in the outside, but in the inside, it's brewing. It's there.
That's huge, because what you're basically saying is it could even be that beautiful thing as well as that ugly characteristic that might rear because of that unresolved trauma. Wow, that's thank you for that perspective. I really didn't expect that when I asked that question. Go ahead, Shauna.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in and, piggyback off of what Dr. Jackie says. It's certain things like somebody will look beautiful, but then they have triggers. And once a person is triggered, that's when it rears its ugly head. It's kind of like, and I'm just going to give you like an example. It's the person that goes to work that uses Coke. They're functioning cokehead. Same way when you're at work, at the end of the day, you can say something like a simple good morning, and that good morning will trigger some traumatic experiences from that person from when they were a child, something happening to them when they were younger. And now just that simple good morning, which was a good gesture for that one person,
Got it. Thank you. Yuko, how about you? And I'm sure you even see that in your performance, right? As you're performing, you might see trauma on someone's face. So what does that look like for you?
I think that's all depending on what type of trauma or what type of issue that we're facing. Trauma, to your point, like some of the stuff that might be considered as a trauma, I might not even aware of that, especially when that happened as a small child, even the small thing, right? Like I couldn't find my mom for 5 seconds and I felt abandoned. Like that could be something that I still have or experience in a different scale, but I don't necessarily have the memory or the recollection, so it was hard for me to identify that. In terms of having a performance for me, I haven't had experience in my own performance,
Right.
but when I curated certain event, depending on the topic, depending on the pieces, some people have gotten triggered,
Wow.
especially when we're dealing with mental illness or suicidal stuff or abuse. Like some people got really triggered. So like holding space in that time, and how can we keep the space that people can be brave at the same time have a support system maybe that looks like a mental care professional on site, or have like make sure people give the disclaimer of some things be triggering. So how can we create a safe space for both people who are sharing the work and on your own healing journey, at the same time create the container for audience member who might or have yet to discover their own healing journey. So it's a very delicate, but there is a balance that we get to figure that out.
Got you. Thank you. Deacon Ingrid, are you there? I don't see that she's there. So I'm going to go to something because it's something I talk about, right? That I think in different facets all of us do, and that's wear masks or we're hiding, right? So I know for me, as I was growing up, I had anger issues, right? So where I would hide my anger issues were in two places. I would hide them by playing basketball and just hitting people, right? And I used to box. So again, hitting people. It's me hiding my trauma by being physical and getting that out of me. So if I could start with you, Dr. Jackie, where do you hide your trauma? Where does that hide for you?
Well, oftentimes it could be a night in my bed in a fetal position and crying, right? It could be, it's interesting you say that because today I had a conversation with someone who just finished watching Pose. And we know that Pose is the history of battle house of the houses and in the gay community. And I actually lived through that time. That was me being a case manager during that time. That was me wearing combat boots and tights during that time. That was me sitting with parents and saying, you have 6 months to live. You have to do pregnancy planning because if not, somebody else is going to stay with your children. And so oftentimes hiding in my work was what I did best, right? The more the pain, the more I did. Understanding that, and life quality was what I was there for, to support people with. And to my detriment, I didn't speak about it, right? Like it was something that I kept swallowing and kept swallowing and kept swallowing, to the point that, listen, if anybody near me ends up in a hospital, I love you, but I'm not going to see you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I saw in my time too many people in gurneys in the emergency room ready to pass. And so those little nuances is what I've realized that trauma looks like for me.
Right.
Right. If I go into the hospital, my demeanor changes. I navigate it very well. This is my job. I'm an advocate.
Right.
But when it comes to a job, I can do it. But when it comes to, for me, it's like, I don't know about that. So don't anybody get sick because I'll love you from afar. Even sometimes, and it's interesting because even the smell can be a trigger.
Yes.
A
Because
smell.
our nose never forgets a smell.
Yeah.
Never forgets. So like for me, it's the scent of my mother, right? When my mother passed away, because when she did, me and my sister actually went to her home and slept in her bed and just inhaled her scent, her aura, her. So we never forget that, and you know that's interesting. That I love that because a scent can trigger a memory. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, you know, what about you? Where do you go and you just, you know, hide your trauma?
I don't think we heard the name that you are.
Yuko, I'm sorry, Yuko, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, that's me. Okay. No, I love that whole Sen. I think Sen is actually the most strong nerve system that's connected to the memory, right? So I am always firm believer in like sense and memory can trigger stuff. I hide a lot and smile. I try to come across as a smiling person, happy person all the time so that I can avoid everything that's sad, everything that's anger. It used to be me sitting in front of piano for hours and hours at the same time. So I can relate to you playing basketball or boxing. Like it was me playing super dramatic Beethoven, the Chopin, and everything. So I was the loudest kid in my piano school, and I will be playing the fastest, the most dramatic song, and that's how I put all my feelings that I didn't want to deal with.
Wow. Deacon Ingrid, we're talking about trauma, and of course, it looks different for each and every one of us, right? And each and every one of us find a safe haven, safe space to either compartmentalize that trauma or just hide that trauma. You know, and I see you put in the chat, trauma is looking like the uptick in crime recently. Talk about that, please.
So I'm thinking that that for decades, a group of people have just been traumatized and ignored, and their needs have been totally unmet. And like any child, that after a while it can't go on. There's a tantrum that's going to happen. And I think right now that's what we're seeing with this so much violence going on, so much killing right now, that people just feel like they don't care. And I think that that's what it looks like a lot of times, is the apathy that comes from being ignored or being brutalized or being just constantly in a state of readiness, preparedness, not knowing what's going to happen if you walk down the street, if you go out your house.
Right.
And then in terms of also for me, you know, trauma comes from a outside source, as me seeing dogs and sicked on black people when I was a child. You see that now, you see that picture now, but I saw that picture when I was 6 7 years old. So I'm seeing that, or I'm seeing I see the president of the United States head blown off in real time. I see I see the leaders, black leaders, being killed. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Malcolm X was killed in front of his wife and his 5 daughters.
Right.
So that's trauma that we don't even deal with, because we don't even know to deal with it. We don't even know we have been traumatized.
Yeah, I lived in a homeless shelter between my junior and senior year of high school. And when my family was living in that homeless shelter, my mother was intentional about making sure we came and went all together. And I remember walking out one morning, we saw somebody murdered right in front of us. I that was part of my anger as well as a young man, because I didn't know what to do with what I was witnessing, that trauma. And talking about what's going on throughout. I know in New York it's huge. And I want to get to it. I do want to touch on it. Um, Deacon Ingrid, is I believe that the pandemic is a huge contributor to what we're seeing in the uptick of violence from young people, especially who were just confined to smaller spaces to begin with, and now they're they have that I don't care mentality and mindset, and it's manifesting itself in gun violence, and it's scary, out there. It really is, because it doesn't even have to be that you're the intended. It's random as well, which is really scary. So thank you for that. Zalai, it's the same question. Where do you hide that trauma? Where do you go? What's your safe spot, your safe place?
Um, I think that for a really long time, I hid my trauma. It was one of those hiding in plain sight kind of things. Especially my childhood trauma is directly connected to having an alcoholic parent and then experiencing sexual abuse, not by the same person, not at all. But that put me in a space where men were not to be trusted. And so I hid behind weight. I gained massive amounts of weight, especially once I hit adolescence. I was a precocious child. Like, I developed quite early. So I was already attracting gazes at a very young age.
Right.
And so in order to do what I thought was protecting myself, right, I started to eat. And that's one of the, right, like if I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the ACE quiz, which is, I think it's called the Adverse Childhood Experience Quiz.
No, never heard of it.
So it's a set of 10 questions that basically are meant to sort of get a gauge, not taking into consideration again, factors and resilience and stuff like that, just like certain experiences that children have had that could lead to then ailments later on in life, alcoholism, heart disease, depression, and even two traumas, right? 2 out of the 10 can cause severe health issues, mental, physical, emotional. So obesity is one of those. It's one of the signs of trauma. And anyone, and I'm not speaking to just a couple of extra pounds. I'm speaking to genuinely using food, right? Food being your drug of choice.
Yes.
And there are some people who drugs is their thing, right? That's how they hide it.
Yes.
Shauna was talking about the cokehead who's a working cokehead, right? Who does it before work because that's how they get through it.
Right.
And that's what food became for me. It became my coping mechanism. I couldn't control anything, but I could control this. And it brought me joy. And for a moment, it filled in empty holes and spaces that needed filling. And so it was, that was my number one way of hiding what I had experienced.
Gotcha.
I think today hiding trauma, much like Dr. Jackie said, sometimes looks like not getting out of bed. And sometimes it looks like, getting on a dance floor, dancing like nobody's watching, because that's what I got to do right now.
Right.
But yeah, it can definitely, be a spectrum.
Shauna, do you want to at all address that question? It's up to you.
Sure. I would say back in the day, the way I used to hide would be actually getting into makeup. I started with literally, you can transform in a sense. People would look at you different. I would enhance certain things about myself so I wouldn't have to be myself. And then it became a profession. So I started doing other people's faces, and it helped me hide in a sense because as I'm doing their face, it's going to sound a little off, but as I'm doing their face, I'm very up close, very personal with the person. And believe it or not, as I'm talking to them, they would start to give me so much of them with only knowing me in such a small, little tiny few minutes or hours of knowing me. And I became their safe place with them not knowing that they were my safe place because I was right there up close and personal.
Right.
And now as an adult, it's going to sound a little crazy, but where I hide now is adult cartoons before I go to bed. I used to do it as a teenager, but my best friend pointed out, along with my husband, that that's what I do before I go to bed. I play it. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen different episodes. I watch them. They make me laugh, and it allows me to kind of get rid of any of the trauma or the unwanted feelings for the day, and allows me to reset for the next day.
Yeah. Some of our greatest comedians. I remember watching Richard Pryor's story about his comedy was based upon the fact that he had trauma in his life, some of the things that his family did. So I certainly understand that and can identify with that. I'm going to hit on a question that when we met a few weeks ago, we touched upon, but I want to go deeper into this question in talking about cultural norms, because when we talk about cultural norms, when we talk about trauma and mental illness, there's and we all in this conversation come from different places of countries and ethnicities. So I'm going to start with you, Deacon Ingrid. Cultural norms, how do they play a factor in trauma? May it be that we, however we resolve it, or we don't resolve it. So how does that play a factor?
So from my age group, getting axe thrown at you or being beaten till you're bloody, by your parent, that's something you just accept. You just,
Okay, she went out.
And that was going to be good. I was
I
waiting for it.
already
I
know.
leaned in.
I
Yeah,
was
she
holding
has.
on for that. Yes, Dr. Jackie, until she comes, please help us with that, with your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say she has so much history that she has lived
Hmm.
that we can learn from. That I was really also ready for that.
I was holding on. I was
Right.
ready.
I was like, wait. Oh, it's interesting. This question is interesting, right? Because unfortunately, everything is just a statistic. Everything is data. Everything is in a pool somewhere,
Yeah.
right? It's living somewhere. All our medical records are living somewhere. And so to say that I had been, I'm a domestic violence survivor, right? I'm a fire victim survivor, right? Domestic violence was when I was 21, right? I know I'm 25 now. That's um, and so back then I didn't want to be the statistic, right? I got out. I was one of the ones that was fortunate. I got out with my baby in my hip. I made it to mama's house, right?
Right.
But the difference now is that I can't no longer rely on what the norms say because it's my responsibility to heal. It's not anybody else's responsibility. It's my responsibility. My happiness is my responsibility. And so when I lost everything to the fire, I surprised myself when I leaned into three of my, you know, besties, as you will, who are mental health providers, right? One is a psychologist, the other is a social worker, and the other one, has a PhD in counseling. And I reached out and I said, listen, I know my husband has all of these resources, but I can't navigate. Mind you, I was the one who navigate for everybody else.
Right.
But my own trauma didn't allow me to see the fogginess in front of me, right? And so cultural norms would have me not seek the support that I need because I don't want to be that number.
Right.
right? I don't want to be the Latina, right? And make those people right? Because there's enough bias about my race.
Yes.
I'm already a woman. I'm in a minority. I am a statistic of domestic violence. I'm a statistic of blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? And so, in that, how it played out for me is being an overachiever,
Mm.
right? I became that overachiever. I was the high school dropout, right? I went back for my college degree. I went back for my master's. I got my PhD. If there's not a course that is not out there that I don't want to take.
Right.
Right? But that's because culture would tell me that in order for me to be somebody, I have to do all of that.
Right.
Right. And so I'm grateful I've grown out of that. But the trauma, right, has had me in that track,
Gotcha.
in the track that I'm constantly going, not allowing myself to feel. I don't want to feel that mess. I don't want to feel, first of all, I don't even want to confront it.
Right.
Never mind feel it.
Right.
Do you honestly think I want to remember being picked up by my neck and my crotch and being flung like it was, lucha libre, right? Which is, the fighting matches, and think it was okay for you to come and hug me afterwards,
Right. Mm.
right? And so, yeah, so what I would say is, cultural norms will have you do things that if you don't sit back and reflect and really look at what is your responsibility to yourself, then you don't get the help you need.
Gotcha. And I see Deacon Ingrid is
Okay.
spam is again. So we'll get back to her. Shauna, how about you? The cultural norms around trauma. How you know how do they play a factor for you?
Um, I want to say literally the way it plays a factor for me. Growing up in a household, black mom from the South, whose mother had her young. So for her, she ended up growing up with her aunts and uncles in a house, 13 kids in one house. Her mom, in her mind, believing her mom didn't want her. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? So as she became a mom, she had my sister and I, and would do any and everything for us as long as we did well in school and we weren't disrespectful. The thing that was lacking, which it doesn't seem huge, but the thing that was lacking was the hugs, the kisses. As a young girl, I usually tell my husband, and it makes him laugh in a sense because I find myself saying it. He'll lean on me and I'll say, I didn't eat your breakfast today. Get off of me. And he was like, what does that mean? And I told him, growing up, when I would lean on my mom as a little girl, if we were on a train, if I would see a little girl lean on her mom, I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. And I would go for the lean and I'd get nudged off. I didn't eat your breakfast today. Sit up.
Wow.
So as I gotten older and became a lot more vocal, and I'm pretty vocal,
Yes, you
very
are.
blunt, very blunt,
Yes.
but growing up scared to say it or scared to ask these questions. So as I became an adult, I would always say, why you don't really hug me, or why you don't really, give me kisses or anything. And she said, my job is to provide for you as a mother. So for her, that cultural trauma that she dealt with, and she died believing her mom didn't want her
Mm.
because her mom never came to get her where she came. Her mom, I don't call her grandma because I really didn't know my grandmother like that, but my grandma came back for the other kids as she had gotten older. But what I had found out down the line was that um they wouldn't give her back, they wouldn't give my mom back to
Ah,
her
interesting.
mom. So my mom died believing just my mom didn't want me, and she held on to that for so long where it trickled into me because I became kind of like traumatized by, like, not wanting always to hug or to kiss. But then some moments I'm all about hugging and kissing and give me a hug. Or if I see my friends, I'm like, I love you, I love you, I love you, because I want them to know. But then there's other times that I'm super withdrawal from it.
Gotcha.
And I want nothing to do with it. So just culturally, I don't know. I guess it's the Southern thing of, back in the day of taking someone's child, not giving them back, and Now they have to deal with that, and then it becomes another issue within the next generation and having to break it. Whereas I'm there trying to, but still not there.
Got it.
You
So,
know.
Lai, how about you? And if if Deacon Ingrid comes back on because she's in and out, let's see if we could get her. Can you hear us, Deacon Ingrid?
Did I get back in?
Yes, ma'am. You're back. And
I can hear.
before we lose you, we want you because we were bracing for your answer. So we're still on that question. How do cultural norms play a factor in trauma and resolving trauma? So please bless us with what you were going to say.
So I don't believe that that there's a generation of us that never have addressed how we are raised
Yes,
and
ma'am.
from our backgrounds,
Absolutely.
our whole family history is to hide anything and everything, and in hiding, we never really get to address it. You have to be very courageous for my age group to say to address it and want to deal with it. It's one thing to address it and then just gloss over it. So I believe most of us have just really glossed over it. I myself included. I remember growing up that if you so even now
We lost that last part. You said you remember
when
growing.
I realized
You said growing. We
I remember growing up
go ahead.
and
I'm sorry.
growing up, you're raised that if you're not bleeding, you don't have a reason to cry. So so the pain that you might have look at it and see it as being active, you kind of just keep pushing it under the rug and pushing it under the rug and pushing it under the rug, so that it never ever really gets to be addressed. It never really comes up until something pushes you and you remember something. And then even then, if even right now, if I remember something, I'm still trying to find a way to get rid of that memory. Um,
Yeah.
but I realized recently that I needed to address it, and I knew it was something that I needed to address. And so I took a class with Ayan Levan Zant to she was a class she was calling healing uh, sexual trauma energy, and
Got it.
so in in addressing it, were parts of people that I have left behind in different places that I just left them there.
Mm,
I never went back to get them. And
mm,
I found that from that class, I realized that I had left those people and I needed to gather them back
mm.
into me to make me whole, because I just, like I said, it was like, okay, that happened. Bye. I'll see you later. And I never really got a chance to tell them that, you're still a part of me and I still love you.
Wow. That's powerful. People you left in a certain place, you had to go back and gather them. Whoa, you said a thing there. Absolutely. Salai, I'm sorry to do this to you for you to follow that up.
No. Oof. Um, I personally feel that culture can play a really huge role in trauma, both in shaping it and in, overcoming it and healing from it, if it's possible for a person to do that.
Right.
I think to some extent, I think especially when you come from a certain like cultural, or even, I mean, it may not necessarily be culture, but a background that is rooted in strife, backgrounds that are rooted in, in slavery or genocide or just extreme poverty of some sort, right? These things, they color who you are, they color how you raise your children, they color the way in which you see the world. And so, it does become a matter of, we just need to survive. And so, yes, that horrible thing happened to us, but if we stay there, we will not survive. And so let's not talk about it. Let's not look at it. Let's not think about it. Let's just put it aside so that we can move on and continue to survive and do what we have to do for survival's sake. And I think therein lies and are born the generational curses, the generational trauma that we carry with us. The last time I was here, I had talked about the fact that my mother, who is a very loving, very beautiful person, I said it before, my mom is the kind of person who other people call mom. And once they get to know her, she becomes everybody's mother. But when I told my mother the first time that I was, going to go see a therapist, her first question is like, "What, are you crazy now?" And it's like, way to be supportive, mom. Like, no, I'm not nuts. I'm not nuts, but I have things that I need to talk about. And I think that's born out of, it's born out of fear, right? It's born out of a sense of like, if you begin to open doors, there is no telling what will be behind it. And there is no telling if we can survive it if you start opening doors, which we have unconsciously perhaps, or maybe in reality and vocally agreed that we would all close and ignore that door is there. We just walk by it every single day as if we don't see it. So yeah, I think I think culture can have a huge impact in just who you are, the messages you received, the things that you were told to focus on. It happened already, let it go, leave it in the past, there's nothing you can do. I think it can be really, it can be really negative in some ways, when that's the situation. And I think also, to some extent, in some ways, our cultural upbringing and the ways in which we experience the world also make it so that we sometimes don't even know when we're experiencing trauma, or that the things that we're hearing and telling our children are traumatic and inducing trauma, right? Like, Shauna, like, your mother probably thought that in providing for you and making sure that you were fed and that you ate and that you had a house and that you slept comfortably and warm at night was providing you everything that you needed, right? Not realizing
that was it.
Denial of that physical affection is a trauma in and of itself, right? I think of parents who want their children to be overachievers, who put that weight of needing to excel on their children, right? And how that causes trauma. And so sometimes, even in things that we think we're doing correctly, we don't even realize that we're enforcing it. And it's only happening because, again, it's how we were raised, it's our culture. I mean, I think of all the times I got the crap beat out of me. Which, today I laugh at it, but thinking back on it, like, if I were to tell people about it, they would be like, "Oh my God, you were abused."
Right.
And I was like, no, that's just the way it was. My mother would say things like, "You either sit down or I'm gonna sit you." And if my mother told me she was gonna sit me, it was not gonna be a pretty thing. Right? Like, that kind of thing. And today we can recognize what it was, but once upon a time, that's the way you raise children, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think culture can have a huge role in trauma and how we experiencing it and how we deal with it.
Yuko, how about you? I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, and now just in a different way where we were talking about trauma. How does that cultural norm, or how does it shape, being able to deal with trauma?
Yeah, I like while everybody was talking, I tried to like something came out for me. And I said, I have to share this. I have to share this. So I've been like trying to come not forget as I was listening to everyone. So it was a little rough. But what came up for me, it's like whether that is in Japanese culture or Latina or Black, and like we are all in one way or the other. Don't talk about it. Put that under the rug, right? And behave and smile and get your thing done. And what was coming up for me is how restricted, or rather, the culture, the Japanese culture of you're supposed to be this way. Don't go off the railroad. Don't don't step away from the line. You're supposed to be this way, right? And I was thinking, wow, back in the days, few hundred years ago, if we just honor our family by going out of the way, and we literally have to kill themselves. That was our culture. All the suicide and harakiri and all that was like you dishonor the family because you did something different or you did something wrong. So that was popping up in my head. Wow,
Wow.
that is very dramatic.
Yeah.
And for me, someone who decided to move out from the country, I felt so different and so out of known from my culture, so much to the point that I run away from my home.
Mm-hmm.
I run away thinking that I will fit in because America is more open and free. But you know, the other day, one of my dear friends said, like wherever you are physically, if you don't resolve the problem will come with you. So you're gonna have to face it. So right now, I feel like, especially this whole anti-Asian and xenophobia happening, and I had to really face my identity as a Japanese woman, and resolving that and really facing who am I and my culture and what that entails for me. Facing this whole identity on its own is doing the trauma work for me.
Yeah.
So it has been a lot of education, but at the end of the day, it has been a very, very powerful healing journey to understand who I am and what my ancestors been through and what my family's been through, and what from that understanding and from what I'm doing, what do I want to pass it to my next generation, whether that is my own or whoever that may be. So culture totally shifts everything. Culture helps us form things, makes us stronger, or break us sometimes, but at the end of the day, again, we can't run away from who we are. So that's part of it.
Thank you. And I'm going to add a perspective to this. Obviously, being the only man on the panel, in that, in addition to the cultural norms in the Black household, there is the you have to be strong and keep moving, right? You know, I recall in having uncles that you had to be still when they were around, and you could just see the trauma on their face, um, and you could just feel it in them, and they every day had to wake up and go to work, right? And that's one thing my wife and I talk about a lot over the last year. People don't realize with, for example, and Yuko, I know you've had to deal with this recently with what's going on with the Asian hate, right? Every day that, for example, we see a Black youth, man, woman, or child murdered, that we don't know that woman, man, woman, or child, but we feel that. Um, and tomorrow, when I show up for work, that trauma that I have of watching it and hearing that life taken, I have to leave it at the door. And for me as a Black man, I first of all, I'm an empath. I feel it all. I feel when the first second I saw of George Floyd's neck being kneed on, I had to stop the video because I could feel that. Right. So as a man, we're told not to feel that, especially as Black men. We're told not to feel that. Um, when we're discriminated against in the workplace, we're told you can't be the angry black man as well. And I know my wife talks about the angry black woman. We can't be that in the workplace. And Shauna, you've worked with me, you know, that we can't be that. We have to be something different. So, from a man's perspective, putting those norms aside and me being really clear and saying, I don't want to look like my uncles. I don't want to walk around with whatever they're carrying that I think might have killed all of them at a young age. I'm going to address it and do something about it. So there's that in terms of norms for black men. But we started a little late. If everyone is okay, us going about another 10 minutes. Is that okay with everyone? Everyone, thumbs up. Okay with that? Awesome. Because I love this discussion. I love having you guys. We're gonna have this is amazing. So I know we all have trauma. I know we operate with trauma. I know that we are able to be amazing in everything that we do. Um, I'm going to start with you, Shauna. How do you help others deal with trauma in your life? Because you have it as well. But how do you help others with it?
Let's see. For me, I'm like you when I see someone going through something, even though I know how I feel, I for the most part at this age know my triggers and can kind
Mhm.
of put them or compartmentalize them in different places for where I am or what I'm doing for the moment. When I see people going through things, I feel horrible. So the first thing that I usually do is I speak positivity over them. There is a young lady that used to do, well, she still does makeup. And I remember years ago, it was almost kind of like a competition. We had the same audience, the same models, the same photographers. And it would always be, oh, I wanted to work with you, or I wanted to work with you. I worked with this young lady, and the competitor makeup artist, she says, oh, well, she's working with me next time. That's phenomenal. So when I
Yes.
walked in, when they were working, she was like, Dad, girl, I was trying to reach you, but you just weren't available. So the competitive makeup artist caught an attitude. Again, this is years ago. We're on the same Facebook platform. And when I tell you this girl cries all the time, I mean, literally cries and cries. And she puts herself out there. She's so vulnerable about how she feels as though she doesn't love herself and this, that, and the next. And there's so many people saying, I love you. I love you. Don't cry. Don't. People are not realizing she doesn't need to hear, I love you, because that doesn't mean anything if she doesn't love herself. Right. So, with that being said, I didn't say anything except put some self affirmations there for her, because hearing I love you from other people when you don't even love yourself kind of sometimes doesn't even matter. You
Right.
love me, you love me, you love me, you love me, but I don't even love myself. What am I here for? You
Right.
know, so for me, I do a lot of self affirmations, and I also found myself falling into a pit of people starting to call me every time they were going through things, to the point where I kind of had to pull back because it was starting to give me some type of anxiety.
It triggers
Um,
you. Yes.
hmm But again, resetting every day by way of those crazy cartoons helps give me the empathy and the sympathy that different people need. So that's how I kind of handle it, with a lot of self affirmations. I refer books to people. I tell them to pray. I don't know, not everybody is religious, spiritual, but if I know you are, I definitely will pray for you. I will send you some prayers and different things like that. So that's how I do it.
I love the prayer part because I'll pray right there for them
Mm-hmm.
with them. So Deacon Ingrid, we want to take advantage of you while you are here. So, our question is, how do you help others heal from trauma?
Um, I like I like touching people.
Mm,
I like hugging them. I like holding their hands and patting them. And I think a friend of mine was not realizing that she was suffering from a form of trauma, and I had to constantly remind her to take a deep breath and to breathe. I like myself. I actually like taking baths. I like the water. I like the feel of the water surrounding my body. It reminds me, I believe, of probably being inside the womb and not and feeling safe and feeling
Safe, yeah.
clean.
Mhm.
Um, and also, yeah, trying to provide a area or a space where people feel loved, they feel comfortable, they feel my joy, just trying to bring joy, praying and standing with them is really all you can do. And even when today the guy today I was in the supermarket and the guy was just he was in a state and he wanted to talk to me and I talked to him. I had a conversation with him, and then everyone was saying, "Oh, you gotta go. You have to leave her alone." And he was still just wanting to have a conversation because somebody was being gentle with him.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. Yuko, how do you help heal others through trauma, with trauma? Do you even realize you're doing it? Also, is a question.
I think my artwork is dedicated to that.
Oh, wow.
My performance and bring joy and tell the stories, whatever it is. I would and I, Jackie, don't get mad at me, but every time she watches my show, she cries, and that's what. And in order for me to create a show like that to touch people, I really have to heal myself first. Because just adding on to Shauna's point, like if I don't love myself, if I don't deal with my own healing, I can't do anything
Yeah.
for other people. So it's my artwork. It's really deal with my own healing and then channel that outward and share that story as much as possible. So that's what I want to do, continue to share that artwork with people.
Gotcha. Salai, how about you? How do you help heal people?
I think one of the things that recently, especially in the last few years, I've started to do is to be open about my own trauma. Um, I think there is something to be said when someone really recognizes that you can truly empathize, not only sympathize. Um, when you can say, I've been in those trenches, and if you need me, I will come down with you because I know exactly where that is.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
So that's something that I've definitely I've been
Mhm.
more apt to do. And I think that the more I myself am willing to speak of my own traumas, um, the more I make it okay for other people. And then in so doing, the more I start to even recognize traumas that I have that I didn't even know that I had. And I start to explore pieces of myself that I didn't realize were in need of exploring. When you were talking, Jerome, about your experience as just like a Black man and just living in this world, right? Seeing what happens to Black men and Black bodies. And, I've told my coworkers before, I used to have a very deep ingrained fear of white people. And it was a genuine fear. I would not want to be in a room if I was the only person of color in that room. I did not like to be in white spaces. I did not like to be surrounded by them because there was a sense of, you know, what if I'm not wanted here? Because especially in New York City, you can very much grow in an enclave where like
Absolutely.
everyone looks like you and
Right,
everyone talks
right,
like you
right.
and everyone has had your experience.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, so that even in a place like New York, you can genuinely grow up surrounded, never really meeting white people or, to me, white people were the teachers. And because I was Catholic, the priests and the nuns, they were the white people in my life. And, I didn't realize how much I had internalized the stories of white people in relationship
Mm.
to everyone else.
Wow.
And it was only in speaking to students, talking to them about who they see in positions of power and positions of authority, right? The fact that to my kids, I'm an authority figure.
Right.
I was like, yeah, but I'm like you guys, like, you know, I speak Spanish and I'm a minority and I listen to hip hop. And like, yeah, come on, we're exactly the same. And they're like, well, I don't see much difference between you and Miss Markhausen. You know, like, you're still a person. And I was like, oh, okay. But, you know, eventually it was like having those kinds of conversations where I realized like, wow, yeah, you know what? I too, once upon a time, was afraid of authority, but especially authority that looked a certain way.
Yeah.
To the point that it stopped me from going into spaces that I probably had a right to.
Yeah.
Because of that fear. And that is, you know, internalized trauma. And so the more I can speak to my own trauma to others, I think the more it destigmatizes, the more it shows that it's okay, that we will survive, that often we will thrive and come out better in the end if we're willing to do it. It gives the fact I've dedicated my life to the education of Black and Brown children. And so I get to be a living example to them of what you can be and you can do and how different that can be. But I have to be honest in myself, because I will tell you, kids who grow up hard, the one thing that they can smell is BS.
Yes, they can.
They will sniff it out 50 miles away. They cannot explain to you the algebraic equation they just learned yesterday, but if you come to them wrong, they will set you straight real quick.
Yes, they will.
Yes. And so yeah, so authenticity is about my own experiences and learning not to feel shame. There's no shame.
I love that. Yeah, the young people when they keep it real with me. Yes, I love that. Dr. Jackie, please, you're up. How do you heal others from trauma?
Well, there's a couple of things that came up when Zulai was speaking about children. It's also understanding the history, right? Like she mentioned. And I always, because I teach social work, I'm a professor and I teach social work, and I have people read the book From Poor Law to Welfare State, right? And to understand, you know, coming from the old world into the new world and how that played a role. Right. And also to see that children at one time, just like women, were looked at as property. Right. If I had 10 kids, those 10 kids were going to plow the land. Those 10 kids were going to be my prosperity. So to see that in play in direct correlation with what Zulai said, how our culture and history plays a role. Yes, that's what came to mind. In terms of every time you go having a performance and me crying, is because I am so, not only am I healing, right? But to be able to see her go through it. And I remember one particular performance, the trauma manifested itself physically, right? And so, you know, it's what some people would call, you know, purging, with whether it's coming out one way or the other, or what, however is manifesting. And so to be able to see that, you know, to me, it was beautiful to be able to say there's one part that she's healing.
Right.
But not only is she healing, but she's supporting so many others, because now there's awareness in certain areas that other people would say, that's a taboo. We don't talk about that. Forget going to see a show about that, right?
Right.
You crazy? We don't do that, right? And so, me personally, as a professor, I make sure that I teach in a way that my students can see when something is going on and bring support, right? I teach theories of counseling. I teach counseling techniques, therapy. And so to be able to bring the compassion into that, right, is not just a diagnosis, is what is it? What are we working with? And so to be able to teach it in a classroom in a way that that's tangible, is a way in which I support with healing. What's interesting, and I didn't think about it until now, that the question has been posed, is all my my career trajectory has been support people with healing. Right, I was in the medical field. I was an administrator, a vice president of organizations to support, you know, with seeing a person as a whole, not just a piece of them. So when I was working with the HIV community, we didn't see just the person and the medical diagnosis. No, we knew that if they need that housing supported them, with getting the medication they needed. They needed a refrigerator for some of these things. They needed a good night's sleep.
Right.
So housing is needed. Mental health is needed. There was so many different things that were needed. For example, substance use. If they were active, they needed some kind of detox, rehab. How do we support? So in hindsight, I've noticed that is no coincidence that what I'm doing now in my own company and through the church, that it resembles that of which I've done and what I've learned to do.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, yes, prayer is it for me.
I already know.
Trust me. Listen, we've been praying for 450 days today.
Amen.
I'm going to lay that at the altar because I don't know what to do with it. Look, no, there's a greater power than me.
Amen.
For me, that's the Lord Jesus Christ, and He's gonna look.
Amen.
I don't know. Use me.
Yes.
I'm here. I'm willing.
Yes.
Like, guard my heart, guard my soul, guard my mind, but I'm here. And so to be able to do financial literacy from a place of, let's look at your emotions. Let's see what emotions play with money, because the emotions come from, like Shauna said, like it's ingrained
Right.
from our upbringing. And then let's talk about those beliefs. I'm going to tell you that some of you sitting right here, you don't even have your own money belief yet. Because we're too busy dealing and unpacking the values of our forefathers, foremothers, right? Of those that came before us. We're still unpacking the belief of, you have to save money, but why am I saving money?
Right.
Oh, you're saving money to pay your bills. Oh, that's all I'm working for. So even unpacking that. So I'm dealing with financial literacy, that if I get to the budget, that's great. But the front end is the most important, which is the emotions, which is the beliefs, right? Because all of that brings up something else. And believe it or not, through that process, I oftentimes uncover depression. And so what's important is for me to have a team that I can say, listen, can you take this client?
Right.
Right?
Refer.
Yes. Or can you have a screening session? Let me know. I don't know if they need it or not. Maybe they do. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right. So having a team is important. As of late, the entrepreneurship clinic is a 10-week session that I have, and it's all spiritual. It's all, it's doing business God's way.
Yes.
And you know what? To be able to step to the side and say, Holy Spirit, have your way.
Praise.
Right? That's not me. Right? I can show you, yeah, this is how you're going to get a client. This is how you're going to market. But when God is there holding you, right? Because something comes up.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm talking to you about your story that really helps form your business. Right? So you're part of the business. You're not a separate entity of the business. You know the stuff that comes up, right? And so I support with that. God supports me in that healing process, because I also have one-on-one with the people. It's not just, oh, we're going to have this forum, this 10 of us, because it's really intimate. And then I'm going to let you bleed until we come back next. So you get to figure it out. No, then we have a session, right? Because if I open something up, I want you to speak about it.
Yes.
And so through that, it was interesting. God then told me the importance of having a spiritual clinic, because you see, if you are dealing with trauma, what are you giving someone else?
Yes.
What are you filling that vessel up with?
Yes.
And so God clearly spoke to me, right? Social workers that are listening know you can't commit me, right? You can't diagnose me, right? I operate in the spiritual realm, right? When it comes to God. And so, it was very clear that a spiritual clinic, right? Alignment with God was needed.
Yeah.
Who are you? Let me remind you who you are,
Yes.
right? According to that belief that God created us. We're made in His image. We're a royal priesthood. Yeah, we had issues that happened while we came on this planet and to this world, but let's not forget who we are. Once all of that is unpacked, then it seems as if you're ready for the healing process. Does it stop there? Absolutely not.
Yes.
I probably, people probably see me walking down the street and they're like, here comes that crazy lady, the Pandora box is going to open. But I'm going to support you with the Pandora box, right?
Yeah.
And so I make myself available. Every time I end the prayer call, I'm like, listen, I'm here if you need to speak. Not because I'm like, oh, look at me. No, because I know.
I already know.
You know what I'm saying? I know what it's like to look and open my cupboard and say, crap, where's my next meal going to come from?
Yeah.
right? Or I know what it's like to lay down and say, sugar, man, like I know I'm one step removed from paying this mortgage. What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
These are real hardcore conversations.
Yes.
Right? Or you know what? Damn, Jack, you remember when your father left when you were 4 years old, right?
It
Like
comes back just
it
like that.
all comes back. I could be
Yes.
cooking, stirring the pot. Well, that's a lie because I don't cook, but I could be doing something, right? I just lied. No. I could be doing something and it pops out,
Right.
right? So for me, God first, me
Got it.
removing myself and allowing
Amen.
people to heal and to then do what they want to do.
Amen.
Like, I have had people in these workshops where they're like, you know what, I'm a retired person. I don't want to do anything. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Right? Praise the Lord. Who says you
Mhm.
have to do something?
Right. Right.
Society tells us you have to do something.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so yeah, sorry I was long-winded. I just get carried away because I think
Mhm.
it's a mixture of everything that has already been said. Speak about it. Tell your story. I'm very passionate in the mornings. Sometimes the prayer line, I'm like, people, use your voice.
Yes.
Use your voice because in your voice there's power. There's when you get to speak something out, when you get to actually say, oh crap, I said that,
Yes.
you can't put that back in your mouth.
No, you cannot.
Right?
Mhm.
It's there.
Again. And so you get them to do something about it. And so, I am grateful for the praise team. I mean, there's not one time that I don't say, listen, let's pray. We've gone to lunch together where there's a prayer petition. We're like, okay, we need to stop. I know your mouth is full, but we need to pray.
Pray right now. And
Right?
I don't know if you realized this, Dr. Jackie, but it was a year ago tomorrow that now I'm a 30 plus year financial professional. It was a year ago tomorrow where you and I talked about doing a financial seminar in Buy Black for Life,
Wow.
and you saying to me about the emotions and the psychology around finances. I 30 plus years, I've never heard that said to me. And it just gave me a whole different perspective and even how I look at a client that I'm talking to. Whole different. I mean, you said that I'll never forget when we ended the call. I'm like, she doesn't even realize what she just deposited into me as amazing. So I a year ago tomorrow, Dr. Jackie,
Wow.
is when we had that conversation. So thank you.
Thank
You
you.
already
Mhm.
know. So I want to answer really quick that question, and then we'll just have everybody a minute just give us their last words. And my answer to that question of how I heal is this, right? I used to be the one to take it on, right? And I know all of us have said that. But Dr. Jackie, you said something that has helped me in referring, right? Because I'm an empath, now I'm carrying that burden with me. And because I'm not able to either help that person get a breakthrough immediately, now I have something on me that I'm not qualified to be able to help someone with. However, I just honestly believe having this particular forum, having conversations like this, it's not only helping our community, it's helping every single one of us who are engaging in this conversation. And I need each of you to know that your presence and your words and your conversations are helping me as well. And I know they are helping our community. So I needed to just say that. So I just need 1 minute, last words. We will start with you, Deacon Ingrid. Any last words that you would like to share with our group, please, about this particular topic?
So this happened Sunday, being in church, and the pastor was a prophet, and he was throwing out prophecies to individuals in the church, and me being the type of person that's greedy, I decided to take every prophecy he threw out to someone else, and whether it was good or bad. But the one that really I realized that it was that he said, he said to a young lady, you need to stop letting other people's situations become your emergencies.
Oh my God. Oh,
And I grabbed that one because I said, that's
That one
me.
you held on to.
And that one, some of them I could give to other people. Like he saw people getting new houses and packing up, and I want to stay in my house. But that one was the one that one was the one that made me realize how often all of us we go off to nut moon for other people and we don't do it for ourselves. And so I try more and more to say no. It's not an easy thing to do, to say no. But I recently said no. I may have lost a friend behind saying no, but I didn't need the drama. So saying no can be just as good as saying yes.
Amen. Here's the thing that my wife taught me. Saying no is saying yes to something else. And most importantly is saying yes to you. So my wife taught me that. You have to learn how to say no, Jerome. Saying no is easy to me, so I'm good with that. So thank you for that. Shauna, please, any last words, sis? Oh, we lost her. I'm sorry. It was a lie. Any last words?
Um, I guess it's just for anyone that is hearing this. I think that if you're ready to deal with your trauma, then it should be your priority. I think that um, you know trauma can play such a role in our lives, both again, like we've said, and like I said often, right? Sometimes in ways that we don't even realize. We don't even see the way in which the trauma is playing out in us, right? When Dr. Jackie talks about financial trauma, you don't even know the things that you're carrying, the financial ideas that you're carrying in your mind because they've just been in your family for so long. And so like um, once we've reached a point where we realize that the things that we're doing are rooted and embedded in something deeper than what's on the surface, then I think the greatest thing a person can do for themselves is begin to explore it, is to stop ignoring it, stop pretending it doesn't exist, and start confronting it, start facing it. Because often when you ask yourself and when you say things to yourself like, I don't even know why I do that. Why do I
Yes.
keep do that? Why do I
Yes.
keep doing it? I know that I shouldn't do that, and yet I still do. Why do
Still
I
do it.
do that? It's often rooted. It's rooted in these things, these traumas, these events, these psychoses that you've internalized, that you've made subconscious, that are such a part of you
Yes.
that you don't even know anymore how you're acting the way that
Right.
you do because there's such a so embrace those things and go out there and learn about yourself, because that by far is the greatest thing you could do, probably for the people around you too,
Awesome.
is to get to understand what's going on with you.
Thank you. Shauna,
Amen.
last words, sis.
all right. I'm back. Sorry about that. So I will say it's just a few words. Literally affirmations, above affirmations, prayer, love, and literally sometimes what we have to do is give people a little bit more patience, time, because they're healing just like we're healing. Their trauma might be a little bit more deeper than ours, or they're just not as strong as we are to handle it. So we just have to kind of have a little bit more patience for other people while they're going through their trauma as well. But also self love first.
Thank you.
Mm.
Dr. Jackie.
So yeah, a couple of things. So that you carry around stuff. How I can support you is to remind you that Jesus died on the cross for that,
Amen.
right? And so I had to learn that, right? It's like we're there vessels where things pass through us, and we get to leave it someplace so that we don't take it, right? What I would say is, First, I want to say I'm sorry for any traumatic experience you might have had, anyone on this panel, right? Oftentimes, hearing I'm sorry, of course.
Mhm.
The other thing is, not everybody's trauma is the same. So, being mindful of the words that we say, it's very
Mhm.
individual. It's very individual, right? You know, someone could have gone through similar, but they don't deal with it the same way. And so to be compassionate, to listen, to hear, and you know what? If you're not that person, don't beat yourself up. Just find the person that is, right? Don't beat yourself up. And for the people that are seeking to deal with issues, listen. Speaking to someone is not a bad thing, right? Um, But sometimes it's just being able to get it out of your chest and allow someone to then support you and guide you in the process, right? Um, so what I would say is reach out. This platform is great for that. You have many professionals here, um, and this a viewer. Feel free to reach out to me. Listen, I don't charge for supporting you. That's not who I am. But I'm here to hear. And sometimes it takes just breathing on the phone to say, wow, I'm breathing.
Yes.
Like I'm breathing. I'm not holding my breath.
Yes.
So yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yuko.
What I would want to share is for anybody who is facing to um, heal, or even if you're not facing right now, thank you for still being here. Because you could have said, I'm done, I'm not facing it anymore, and decided to end your own life if that was a choice, or just went on a completely different way, but you're still here. So thank you for choosing that. And just because you're here, and just because you are choosing to continue
To be here.
you may get to touch somebody in a way that you can possibly imagine. So thank you for still choosing to be here.
Thank you. And my last words, actually, Yuko, are gonna piggyback in a way off of what you said. And one of the things I'm very vulnerable about is that my own struggles with depression, mental illness, and I talk about the chair that's behind me when my mom died in 2012 and thinking of taking my own life. And here I am 9 years later, and
Mhm.
all of the amazing things that happened in my life, I would have missed out on.
Right.
I would have missed out on me healing. I would have missed out on my wife and I getting married. I would have missed out
Mhm.
on my sons, my son's buying his first home. I would have missed out on my wife and I traveling the world and just seeing the world.
Mhm.
I would have missed out on the amazingness, even though it was bad, the amazingness that came through COVID, of which this
Mhm.
my sit called Buy Black for Life. And I'm getting emotional saying that, but that would have been a permanent decision about something that was temporary. And all of the beauty, and I could go on for hours about what I would have missed out on
Mhm.
had I made that permanent
Mhm.
decision for something that was temporary. And I am unapologetic and vulnerable because I know people see me as a strong person, but even your strong friend has moments of weakness and also imperfection. So understand that.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm always saying check on your strong friend. So I think our
Mhm.
panel, I love you all for being here. I love you all for your vulnerability and your power for doing what it is that you're doing and also healing yourselves. I hope to have you on once again, and we will have another topic. But I thank each of you. God bless all of you. And for the love of our people, buy Black for life. Good night.
God bless for life. Good night.
And I
Night.